Welcome to the Creative Penn podcast. I'm Joanna Penn, thriller author and creative entrepreneur, bringing you interviews, inspiration and information on writing craft and creative business. You can find the episode show notes, your free author blueprint and lots more at thecreativepenn.com, and that's Penn with a double N. And here's the show. Hello creatives, I'm Joanna Penn, and this is episode number 801 of the podcast, and it is Saturday the 29th of March 2025 as I record this. In today's show, I'm talking to longtime Hollywood screenwriter, first-time novelist, T.D. Donnelly, about the challenges and rewards of being a screenwriter, the different business models, why screenwriters want to write novels even if the money isn't so good, different ways to get your screenplay out there, and why Tom isn't worried about the impact of AI. So that's coming up in the interview section. In Writing and Publishing Things, Written Word Media has an article on the key takeaways from the Future of Publishing conference that was in New Orleans last week, run by Russell Nolte and Monica Lionel. It is a small conference, much more intimate than things like Author Nation, and focused on building sustainable author careers with lots of ideas on multiple streams of income. Now, I wasn't there, but I was interested to read about this. The big takeaways included the expansion and popularity of special editions and how much fans love them. The article says one of our favourite conversations was about special edition books because wow, do readers love them. It's no surprise the books are beautiful with covers made from luxury material like velvet or vegan leather. Okay, I have not done velvet or vegan leather yet. Shiny foil, yes, I've done that. Sprayed edges, yes, I've done that. Full colour illustrations, and I've done photos in the books. The books work well as trophies for your Zoom background, conversation starters, and even reading. I would say social media is the big one. And this made me laugh because we were looking at our bookshelf this week. I'm trying to get rid of some books so I can buy new ones, or in fact put the ones I already have in the bookshelves. And I do have a lot of special editions and I buy them on Kickstarter, and they are not for reading. They are definitely not for reading. I read a lot of the time digitally or listen to the audiobook, and then I buy these beautiful hardbacks to kind of look at. And so why do we buy them? Why do readers buy these books? Because humans love pretty things. It's literally the answer. Humans have always loved pretty things. And if, like me, you're not into fashion or makeup or jewellery or just a lot of other pretty things, then books are cool to say, here's all my pretty things. Look, they're on the shelf. I have books for other reasons, but this is part of status. And again, humans do status. I love how it makes me feel when I own a hardback special edition. There's definitely some kind of status thing, even if it's just like, I deserve it, or I love how my bookshelf looks, and I don't even share it on social media. So you can imagine why the trend of gorgeous print books is working well in an age of TikTok and videos on Instagram and all this kind of thing. And I love making them and I love buying them. So long may this trend continue, because if you price it right, you can make more money than selling an ebook, and the readers get amazing books and everyone's happy. So hopefully more options will continue to emerge. Now, they do say if you need money to get one of these printed or multiple of these, Kickstarter is a popular funding option, but results vary. And bringing your own audience is key. For authors with a strong fan base, these special editions can be a fantastic way to increase revenue, but they work best when paired with a strong marketing plan. And I agree with absolutely all of that and more on my latest special edition coming up in my personal section. And of course, this podcast is part of my marketing plan. Now, another takeaway from the event was direct sales are exciting, but not straightforward. And that is an understatement in both directions. Direct sales can be incredible, and there are authors doing just, making 10 times, 100 times more money than they were on other platforms, but they are also very hard. And business is never easy. You have to choose your hard. For example, competing on KU, Kindle Unlimited, with your rapid release ebook is one kind of hard. Competing with Amazon ads or Facebook ads is another kind of hard. Reaching readers by selling direct with your special editions is hard. So you get to choose what kind of hard you would like for your business. The article says many authors struggle with services. Authors are learning as they go, and that learning curve can slow down speed to market and add monthly costs. Also, reviews on direct sales pages are tricky. Amazon reviews can't legally be copied to a Shopify store, for example. So authors are sometimes starting over with respect to reviews on their direct stores. I totally agree with that. Reviews are one of the most annoying things with selling direct, because although you're like, oh yay, I just made this money, you know that the review, you've probably lost a review on one of the big stores. Which is why I try and encourage people to also put reviews on Goodreads now, because Amazon brings in those Goodreads reviews. So any reviews of my books on Goodreads would be most appreciated. Also, more platforms like BookVault, Curios and Ingram Spark are stepping up to help authors with the challenges involved in direct sales. And I was interested to read about Curios, so this is Curios. And on this, one listener, Christine, thanks Christine, emailed. She wanted to share how much she is enjoying selling direct with Curios. And when she mentioned this and I saw the article from Written Word Media, I thought, okay, I am going to mention it. Now, there are so many selling direct options popping up. The main thing is that you, A, read the terms and conditions, and then B, compare each of them with how much the transaction fees are for you and for the readers, and also what they do with the IP. And also the sales taxes. These are important things. So, of course, a few years ago I've been selling direct since 2008, and I used one shopping cart, I think it was called back then. I have used a myriad of options, and I will no doubt use more in the future. Yes, I use Shopify right now, but I'm not saying that's forever. So everybody uses different things. Yes, you get to choose, again, what kind of hard, but some of these platforms are making it much easier. The other takeaways included AI is a tool, not a takeover. AI-enabled services for narration and translation should unlock those markets for authors by bringing costs down substantially. Expect more authors to be able to enter foreign markets and release audio in the near future. And of course, remember that English is a foreign market. US, UK is a foreign market for many people. So yes, there will be a lot more content. And also, authors need community, now more than ever. One of the themes of the conference was that each of us has locks or problems that other people have keys that can help. By finding each other, the keys unlock the locks and enable success. I also agree with this. One, I think we do have to push ourselves outside our comfort zones to do these in-person events. And yes, I will be at Author Nation peopling. And it's very tiring, but it has to be done. And when you're there, it is great. And when you leave, you're like, yeah, that was so worthwhile. And even if you hate Vegas, this is why, it's almost doubly so, because you know that Vegas is a challenge. But for me, it's definitely been worth it. But I wanted to say, I have also found other people to model online. So I've always found people who are successful in a certain way, and then I've tried to emulate them. And it's never been one person for everything. Back in the day, when I first started for podcasting and blogging, Yarrow Starak, who probably many of you haven't even heard of, had a site called Entrepreneur's Journey. He still puts stuff out there. He's moved on from a lot of things now. But back then, he was the person that I modelled for blogging and podcasting. And then over the years, there have been other people. Certainly Christine Catherine Rush, Dean Wesley Smith have been online and in-person mentors for me, various conferences, and lots of people who've taught me different things at different points. So yes, think about if you have lots of locks and you're looking for keys, it won't be the same person for everything. And also make sure you don't try and unlock all your problems at once, because that can get overwhelming. So I'll link to that article on Written Word Media. There was lots of interesting things in that. Also, very useful this week, Pro Writing Aid has a spring sale on. Now, you've probably heard me talk about Pro Writing Aid. It's brilliant tool, helps me do my editing, and I still work with my human editor, but Pro Writing Aid helps me fix a heck of a lot. And they have 25% off the annual subscription just this week. So you can go to thecreativepenn.com/Pro Writing Aid. If you use that link at any other time, you'll still get a discount. But yes, they have a sale on this week. And then I wanted to mention something that I really don't mention very often because I try and avoid the negative side of things. But over on The Productive Indie Author, Tracy has an article on the Indie Author's Scam Survival Guide. She says, indie publishing is booming, which means writers have more control over their careers than ever. But with opportunity comes risk, and scammers are circling like sharks in a feeding frenzy. Every year, new scams pop up, often just repackaged versions of old ones, designed to prey on authors who are still figuring out the publishing game. Because while anyone can write a book, successfully publishing and selling one is hard. That gap between the dream and reality is where the scammers strike. Let's talk about how to spot them, avoid them, and protect yourself. It's a great article, and I also wanted to remind everyone about Writer Beware. That is at writerbeware.blog. And that lists the most pervasive, various scams, but there are more every day. And the reason I wanted to mention this is because there's a couple going around at the moment with my name and my image. And people have been emailing saying that they have worked with me and my image has been used on websites with testimonials, with fake quotes. My book covers have been used on fake sites. So please, unless I am actively promoting things, for example, Pro Writing Aid, and coming up in our sponsorship today, Publisher Rocket. If there are companies that I actively talk about on this show or that I have affiliate links to on my website, then yes, they will be proper quotes from me. But somebody forwarded me an email this week and it was definitely not somebody who I had worked with. And they name-checked a couple of other people in the indie publishing niche. But yes, I've also had my image used on so many things, actually. So yes, please, if you are concerned and if you think, oh, well, Joe did that, so I should do that too, and someone asks you to pay like 20 grand, it is unlikely to have come from me. So please do email me if you're worried, joanna@thecreativepenn.com. If someone has said, no, I endorse them, please do feel free to check with me. But also, the Alliance of Independent Authors keeps an eye on this stuff, and also, like I said, writerbeware.blog, and check out Tracy's article. I'll also put the 6-month caveat on everything. So obviously this podcast has been going since 2009, and there have been interviews with people over the years who, at the time I interviewed people, I was a fan. And then things changed. We all know things change. And this show now, I guess, coming up to whatever it is, however many years, 16 years, obviously things are going to move on. Companies come and go, people come and go, business models change. So just put a 6-month caveat on everything I say. So in AI things this week, it's been a big week again. The biggest thing for authors, I think, is OpenAI's 4.0 image generation model launched. And it is amazing in many ways. But for indie authors, the most impressive thing is its ability to generate accurate text within the image and typography. So yes, it can do book covers. And this seriously blew me away this week. In one prompt, with the examples of my other books in series, it made some amazing covers, which means we can do things that have been out of reach financially for a while. For example, split testing covers. Now, in the past, people have said, oh, yeah, just split test your covers. It's like, yeah, but then I have to pay for multiple covers to be developed so that then I can split test them. But obviously, if you can make them with a prompt, then you can use that for split testing. And if you don't know what split testing is, it means let's say you want to see which of the covers people might prefer or might actually click on. You can say create 4 covers, then you can run an ad, for example, or send an email, and whichever one people click on the most is the one that you would use on your book. So that's split testing, and that has been out of reach for pretty much everyone because you have to get multiple covers designed. Also, we can do that with ads. But yes, I think that's interesting. The other thing is you can ask readers which one they want to read next. And I did this for a couple of books in my Arcane series, and I got excited. I was like, oh, yeah, I want to write that book, which I've never actually really done before because I've never been able to create my own covers beforehand. So that's really exciting. I could send it out to my readers and say, hey, which one of these books do you want first, like do a poll. Now, if you write to market, I don't write to market, but this is would be in the same series, so that might actually work. But you can ask readers which one they want next, or you can generate things you like and then give them to your human designer to communicate the kind of look and feel you're after. And at the moment, what most people do, including me, is if you need a cover designed, you will go onto Amazon or Kobo or Apple or whatever, and you will take screenshots of various covers and you'll say, okay, this is my genre. These are some of the covers that are kind of similar to the vibe I'm looking for. And the designer will come up with something original, but it will be based on that look and feel. And in this way, you can generate things that you can then use for that brief, I guess. So it can also do social media things. It can do a ton of stuff. So you can find all kinds of examples on social media. But I demoed this for my patrons on Thursday this week. People were seriously blown away, made some great movie posters. So I'll be using a lot of this in my promotions for sure. Now, whether you're happy with AI or not, people will be using this for book covers and all kinds of other things. So it's worth trying out so you know how far the technology has come. We are a long way from some of the earlier days. And as ever, I find these things spark more ideas for me, makes me more creative. And in fact, one of the covers, like I said, made me want to write the book. And then I actually have put that in my book research list. And so that might end up turning into a book. And I hadn't even thought about doing a book on that until I used this tool to kind of make me some images. So as I record this, it's available on the $20 a month or up things, but they are planning to bring it to the free tier soon. I'm sure that will happen soon. And in personal news, so talking of beautiful print editions, Death Valley Kickstarter is live as this goes out, and it will be live for 15 days. So yeah, finishing around the 15th of April. It is at jfpenn.com/Death Valley. It is a fast-paced standalone thriller with no supernatural elements. It's pretty much my first one ever with no supernatural. Here is a little about it. The Desert Sanctuary promises an exclusive escape for the ultra-wealthy, a 5-star oasis in Death Valley's unforgiving landscape. But when a devastating sandstorm cuts the resort off from civilization, paradise becomes a prison, and then a killing ground. As the storm rages and the resort burns, 8 lives collide in a desperate battle for survival. As flames consume the hotel and the storm strips away all pretense of civilization, each survivor must decide how far they'll go to escape and who they'll sacrifice along the way. In this pressure cooker of primal instinct and deadly ambition, the only law is survival, and the only way out is through hell itself. On a personal note, why a desert book? So I saw my first desert when I was 8. It's still seared into my mind. We flew to Malawi, Africa, over the Sahara Desert. Now, my mum was teaching there. We lived there for a while. That was back when kids were allowed in the cockpit to visit the pilot. This would have been 1983. I didn't care about the switches and the console and all the technical stuff of the plane. I was staring out at the sunrise over this unending desert. It stretched out to the horizon, so vast, and I could see no signs of people. And I was just captivated. Like I said, I have very few memories of that time, actually, but I have a very strong memory of that desert. And I wanted to be out there. I had this sense of potential freedom that perhaps I've spent much of my life trying to recapture. In the years since, I've visited different deserts. So when I burned out in the year 2000 in London, I went to Western Australia and I camped in the outback and the Northern Territory and spent quite a bit of time in the deserts of Australia, painted my skin with the ochre of red desert dust. I've walked in the Judean desert near Qumran, slept in an eco-lodge in the Negev, and explored some of the Sinai desert in Egypt. And these experiences have emerged into several of my stories so far, but I've always wanted to write a purely desert thriller. Then, in November 2024, I visited Death Valley National Park, and the idea for this book was born, with a very obvious title for a thriller, right? And if you like The White Lotus TV show, it has a bit of that vibe. Luxurious paradise spirals into destruction and is very character-focused. So if that sounds fun, there's a special edition signed hardback, which is really pretty, and it's got the sprayed edges and the foil and all that, and a ribbon, as well as paperback, large print, ebook and audiobook. Now, the audiobook is narrated by my voice clone through 11 labs, which is amazing, and I'm still getting used to how it feels to hear my voice saying things I didn't say, even though I wrote the words. There's also an exclusive How to Write a Thriller webinar with me. If you'd like all my writing tips, it is a 2-hour workshop on Zoom with 2 time zone options, and also a limited number of consulting sessions are available, depending on when you listen to this, because they go quite fast. Or even if you don't want anything, check out the campaign if you are thinking of doing your own. And I did, I think, quite an awesome book trailer with all the characters in. And if you want ideas for your own campaign, you can check out the details at jfpenn.com/Death Valley. So thanks for your emails and comments and photos this week. Andy said, I appreciated your interview with Dr. Wyatt on grief. I observed an interesting connection between your pre-interview comments on audio narration and the soothing voice of your guest, matching the vibe of her area of expertise. Thanks again for such a poignant discussion. Yes, I definitely think Karen's voice is just lovely and soothing. And Monica sent pictures. I think of you each time I pass this cemetery, and today I stopped and took some pictures. I didn't know anything about it, but I found out Revolutionary War soldiers are buried here, and lovely picture of winter light on the graves under the trees. Thank you, Monica. And finally, yes, my Books and Travel podcast is live again, and Julie said, I love the Books and Travel podcast. I'm so glad you brought it back. Everything you talk about enlivens the creative part of my brain to want to do more, write more, travel more. So thank you. Thank you, Julie. And just on that, this week there will be an episode on Death Valley with Steve Hall, who is an expert on the area. And those are now going to be on YouTube on my JF Penn author channel, and the book trailer's there as well, by the way. There'll be a video, but there'll also be an audio feed as well with a bit more of an introduction. Okay, so please leave a comment on the podcast show notes at thecreativepenn.com or on the YouTube channel. You can message me on X at thecreativepenn or email me. Send me pictures of where you're listening or any comments at joanna@thecreativepenn.com. I love to hear from you. It makes this more of a conversation. So today's show is sponsored by Publisher Rocket, which helps you with keyword and category research on Amazon, which you need for your metadata when self-publishing, as well as generating lists of keywords for your Amazon ads. You can do this manually on Amazon, but it takes so much time and you have to think up all the different permutations to search for. So Publisher Rocket saves so much time and frustration. I use it for whenever I publish a new book in every genre I publish. It makes the process easy, which is what we need so we can get back to writing. You can use it to find keywords that readers actually type into Amazon search. You can learn about other authors' sales with the competitor analysis. And you can also use the reverse ASIN feature to see what keywords other books are benefiting from. You don't need to search around and come up with ideas. Instead, look at the keywords that are helping other books similar to yours, making keyword research easier than it's ever been. Plus, you can discover best-selling book categories and niche categories you can use to write to market if that's your thing. You can also find profitable keywords for Amazon ads and easily export them. You can search separately for US, UK and German stores, as well as ebooks, audiobooks, print books, and in English or German. Publisher Rocket is constantly adding new features and capabilities, and it's always a free upgrade for owners. It's a one-time payment and you get 30 days money-back guarantee. You can start researching for keywords, categories and competition right away. There are also handy tutorials, but to be honest, it's pretty intuitive to use. Publisher Rocket is one of my must-use tools as part of my publishing process, and it is very reasonably priced. Just go check it out at publisherrocket.com. So this type of corporate sponsorship pays for the hosting, transcription and editing, but my time in creating the show is sponsored by my community at patreon.com/thecreativepenn. Thanks to the 12 new patrons who joined in the last week, and thanks to everyone who've been supporting the show for months and years. If you join the community, you get access to all my backlist videos and audio covering topics on writing craft and author business, as well as tutorials and demos on AI tools and my patron-only Q&As. Last week, I did live office hours, 90 minutes, where I demoed a lot of things, answered lots of questions, and also put out the recording in video and audio format. The Patreon is a monthly subscription, the equivalent of buying me a black coffee a month or a couple of coffees if you're feeling generous. You get access to everything, all the backlist content, Q&As, office hours, everything. So if you get value from the show and you want more, come on over and join us at patreon.com, patreon.com/The Creative Penn. Right, let's get into the interview. T.D. Donnelly is the author of the thriller The Year of the Rabbit. He's also been a screenwriter for more than 25 years, with credits including Sahara with Matthew McConaughey and Conan the Barbarian, and adaptations for the works of Ray Bradbury, Clive Cussler, Stan Lee, and others. So welcome to the show, Tom.
Hey, Joe, how are you today?
Oh, I'm good. It's really fun to talk to you about this. So first up, tell us a bit more about you and how you got into screenwriting and particularly into adaptations.
Well, okay, so I grew up in New Jersey. My father was an accountant in Manhattan, and my mother was a housewife raising 3 boys, which is not easy, and sometimes doing a little bit of real estate. So nobody in my family had ever been in a creative field. I had no connection, but what I did have was a 20-minute bike ride from my house growing up. Sometime around 10 years old, they built a multiplex, like 10 movie theater. And back in the 80s, that was quite something. And I figured out that on a Saturday, I could ride my bike to that movie theater, chain it up, spend $3-4 for a matinee ticket, and then sneak into at least 2 other movies after that. And I was absolutely hooked. I was like, oh my God, this is the best. And this is the 80s. This is Raiders of the Lost Ark and Empire Strikes Back. And I was transported every weekend pretty much into other fantastical worlds. And I feel like it indoctrinated me into story and into the scope of story and the power of story. And it was all the idea that the Japanese, they have a 100-year plan. And when you want to become something in Japan, you apprentice for 10 years and you just spend all those 10 years learning everything you can so you can become an expert. I guess we call the 10,000 hours now is what we talk about. And I realized at age 15, hearing this, I had like a brainstorm. I was like, hey, if I did that, that's about 10 years of my life. I would still only be like 25, 26 if I spent all my time just trying to be a screenwriter. If I did that, I would be 25, and if it doesn't work out, I could still do something else at that point. I'm still really young and all that sort of stuff. So I kind of set out with that goal in mind, and I told my guidance counselor in high school, I was like, I would like to be a screenwriter in Hollywood, and the guy just looked at me like, where are you? Where do you think you are? What planet do you think you're on? Just had no idea what to do with me, and eventually just kind of he kept trying to suggest other careers that were reasonable, and I just was adamant, and he was like, okay, I'm just going to wash my hands of you and let you go. I've never reached back to contact him, but that would have been funny. Anyway, I got my undergrad at Vassar with English and drama double major, and then I got accepted to USC Film School for a master's degree in the directing program, actually. And my thesis script, this never happens, okay? I want to preface that. This never, ever happens, was the first feature-length script that I ever wrote, and it ended up 2 or 3 years later being sold in a bidding war. I ended up getting hip-pocketed. Hip-pocketing means that an agent says, I'm not going to put you on my official rolls. We're not going to go through the official channels and stuff like that, but I will help you, and I will read your stuff, and I will give you notes. And if something happens, then we'll talk about me representing you officially. Anyway, I had an agent that was hip-pocketing me, and at the time I was editing to pay the bills. I was editing film and television, and in particular television at that point. And the producer I was working for wanted to hire me immediately on to another television project. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And he was like, what? I thought we had a good relationship. I said, no, we have a great relationship, but I've saved up enough money to write for 6 months. And whenever I've saved up enough money to write for 6 months, I always don't take an editing job because I don't want to just be an editor. I want to be a filmmaker. I want to be a writer. And he was like, oh, do you have anything to show me? I said, well, I have my thesis script that I wrote in college. And he was like, can I check it out? And he read it, and he said, I'd like to send it to like a couple of my friends. Would that be all right? I said, sure. And so I called the agent that was hip pocketing me, and I said, hey, this great news. This producer, this guy, he wanted to share the script. And my agent was like, what? He can't do that. When he does that, he's attaching himself as a producer. And I'm like, oh, no. And so he's like, who did he give it to? And I said, I don't know. And so the long story short, too late already. So sorry. He calls up, he finds out who the three producers are, and the three people that this producer sent them to. It ends up it's the head of 20th Century Fox production, the head of another, like three very big people, and calls up the first one and says, there's a script that came to you last weekend. It should not have gone out. I just want to claw it back until it's ready. And they're like, oh, we were just about to call you. We'd like to put in a bid on it. And after that, everything changed. Suddenly, we're in a bidding war, and there ended up being three different bidders, and the script sold for, well, let's just say this. At the time, I had over $100,000 in student debt from grad school and undergrad. And with that sale, I paid off every single debt that I had, and I was free and clear. It was amazing.
That seemed okay. So first of all, you seem very mature as a child to like decide that you want to, or as a teenager, to sort of decide, yeah, I'm going to be a screenwriter, and then obviously making the choice to study it, and then everything falls into place. But I guess by the time you did that major deal I guess it would have been the late 90s. That by then?
95, yes.
95. So you've stuck at this career since then. This seems incredibly single-minded to me.
I basically came at it from this viewpoint. If I'm not trying to do exactly what I want to do with my life, why am I hedging my bets? And I love storytelling. I love stories. I love movies. I love books. My mother would, when I was a kid, she would drop us off at the public library for, sometimes all afternoon, as she would go out and be doing real estate things. And so we read everything in the library. We were indoctrinated in story from a very early age. And I said, if I'm this fortunate to be able to try and fail things, I'd better do that, because I don't want to have regrets. I don't want to have regrets in my life. I don't know why I realized that at such a young age. I don't understand. I don't, if you ask my wife, I'm not a wise person. I'm really not. But in this one way,
single-minded. Yeah. I mean,
a little bit. Yeah, a little bit. I said, if I could do this as a career, I think I would be happy for my whole life. And that thought, once that got in my head, it kind of never left. And it has absolutely been true. As difficult as the writing life can be, it is such a joy each day to know that I'm making something that's never been, and I'm putting it into the world. And there are people that are reading the stories or watching the movies that I've been a part of. And for some of them, it's exactly what they needed at a low moment in their lives. Or for some, it's like it spoke to them in a really deep and human way. And I just think that's magic. That's magic. And if I could be a part of that, I love it.
Well, then you mentioned the word difficult there. And this is really interesting because, of course, I've talked to screenwriters over the years and sort of dipped my toe in and backed off. And people hear negative things in the author book industry as well. But what are the difficult things about being a screenwriter? I mean, as in, has just everything been amazing? And like you said, you've been happy for your whole life. Like, tell us, what are some of the challenges of being a screenwriter?
Well, okay, so one thing, I'll phrase it this way. Craig Martell, in 20 books, they say a rising tide raises all ships, right? In that my success does nothing to harm you. If anything, it might even help you, because if I'm putting out a good book that's in a genre that you're in, it's going to make people want to read more. and probably read your stuff as well. In the film business, in the television business, that is not the case. It is a knife fight in a phone booth because it really is. So let me give you a number here. 50,000 screenplays. That is the number of screenplays that are registered with the Writers Guild of America, of which I am a member, every single year. Of those, there's 20 times as many that are written every year. So that is 1 million scripts a year. And that's just in the U.S. That's just scripts that are in the North America market. 1 million scripts every year. Do you want to know how many films were made in North America in 2023?
Go on then.
500. So, taking a rising tide raises all ships. If you end up getting one of those 500 slots to make a film, that absolutely affects me and everybody else. It is not we're all in this together. It is very much a cutthroat, and the industry is built that way. A lot of times when there is an assignment, it's not just, people don't just come to me with a book and say, hey, would you like to adapt this? More often than not, they're going to 4 or 5 writers that are just as experienced, just as talented, just as right for the material as I am. And I have to go in and I have to pitch. And I have to somehow convince these producers and nowadays these multi-billion-dollar conglomerates, international conglomerates, that I have that special spark that is going to get this project over the line and is going to make this something that is going to make them a ton of money. And that's not easy. That is super hard. And in some ways, selling my very first script I ever wrote was an impediment to that, because I suddenly was thrust into the lunch meetings and the getting to know yous and all that sort of stuff. I was thrown into the deep end before I really had figured out a lot of this sort of stuff. So I had on the job training, as opposed to make all your mistakes in private in the dark when nobody can see you. I had to learn a lot of these things the hard way, and it was really, really difficult.
And I guess of those 500, as you say, I mean, a lot of those are from existing screenwriters like yourself these days, and also existing franchises. So let's say of those 500, how many are like original screenplays that people pitch? Not many. Not many at all. I can't really give you a number, but I would probably say only 10 to 20% are completely original material. The reason being, and film in the film business in particular, is the last truly gatekept industry, right? Back in the 70s and 80s, the music industry was a gatekept industry. If you wanted to put out a record, you had to have a record deal with a major label, right? And they would have the fancy studios and the backup artists and everything you needed to succeed, but they would take the majority of the profits, and you would still make a fortune, so you wouldn't be too unhappy about it. But then when digital recording equipment came out, all of a sudden, everybody could do it. Everybody could they could record in their garage something that was good enough and good enough to get on air. And suddenly, within 10 years, the record industry collapsed, right? The same thing with Kindle for us. The stranglehold that the big publishing houses had over the industry collapsed. But for film, it's a collaborative, very difficult experience, and it takes a lot of people to make a film. It takes a lot of equipment. It takes a lot of time. And so the low price, the lowest entry price you can make a film for is still very expensive, right? And listen, I've worked with Robert Rodriguez, who made El Mariachi for $7,000, $8,000, right? Amazing guy. I love him to death. It's not easy to do that. It's super hard to be the exception that can make things at that low a budget level and really do it indie. It can still be done. There are more and more opportunities to do that now. But because everything is so expensive, that affects what people buy as well. And people want
assurances in this industry. They don't want to buy a spec script, no matter how good that spec script is. They know that spec script has only been read by 10 people, 15 people. They would much rather have a book series that they know have sold 1 million copies worldwide, because that has pre-awareness. That has a promise of, hey, a large part of those people are going to want to come and watch this movie. And so we can afford to spend the $50 million, the $60 million, the $200 million on that project to get it up and going. That's just the reality of the business.
Although we should say, so you are a screenwriter in LA. You're in obviously the US Hollywood film industry, and
Correct.
there is obviously the indie film market. There's film industries here in Europe. There's film industries in India. There's film industries all over the world. So just so for people listening, you have a particular perspective based on these very big budget films, right?
Yes, I absolutely should say that. Not only do I write in Hollywood, I also write on the very high end of Hollywood productions. I did a lot of work on Marvel's Doctor Strange and Cowboys and Aliens and like these big $200 million pictures. I will say that even if you're, I know what the budgets are for BBC productions. I know what the budgets are for ITV. For Canal Plus in France. I know what they are. They're lower. There's more opportunities in some of those places, but there's not. But there is a kind of universal understanding that for most projects that end up getting made and end up getting distributed, the price to get into that, the cost of the minimum cost for most of these films is still, even if it's not $100 million, $200 million, hey, guess what? $5 million is a lot of money. That is still a barrier to entry for a lot of people, and it's a barrier to raise that amount of money in the hopes that is going to make that money back for a lot of people.
Yeah, I was at the Berlin film market, and I learned a lot about all of this, and a lot of the networking is about finding all the different ways you can fund things. So you get a little bit from here, a little bit from there, you get a bit over there and a grant from that location. And it's incredible to me how this works. But let's talk about the business and the money side. We're going to come back to your thriller writing books in a minute.
That's fine.
But in terms of the business and the way the money works of being a screenwriter compared to owning and controlling your own intellectual property. So can you give us a bit of an idea about that? Are you essentially a very highly paid freelance writer?
Yes, that is exactly right. All work in Hollywood is work for hire, meaning when I sell a script, they buy the script outright. They own it. They own the rights to it. They can do what they want with it. I have because I'm in the Writers Guild of America, I have certain rights that are reserved to me. So if they want to make a sequel without me, they still have to pay me for it. I still get credit on the project, et cetera, et cetera. But they do own the things outright, and they get, maybe my deal has licensing money for toys or all of this sort of stuff, but usually not. Usually I'm getting paid. And generally, I get paid in stages, right? I get paid a certain amount for the first draft, a certain amount for the rewrite, a certain amount for any polishes that I do after that. When the movie goes into production, I get a production bonus on the first day of shooting. When it's completed, and the credits have been established and negotiated and dealt with, I get a credit bonus, and then you start to get residuals after that. My wife calls them the green envelopes of joy. 4 times a year, the green envelopes of joy appear on my doorstep, and you never know what they're going to be. You have no idea until you open it. Now, you have some idea because it's a big film that came out, and there's a good chance that first envelope is going to be huge. And it tails off, fairly slowly, actually, but over time it tails off, and eventually you start getting green envelopes of joy that are for $2.50, and you're like, oh, well,
that's
barely.
Well, it might have been a coffee once in LA. It probably isn't
Exactly.
anymore.
No, it feels a little like Patreon. It feels like the studios are now just contributing to my Patreon. But yeah, which is to say that you don't own it, which is a painful reality. Now, though you don't own it, the amount that they pay you to write it is embarrassingly big. The industry compensates writers, or at least writers at my particular area, very well. It is a well compensated business, and to some degree, I mean, a famous author who came to Hollywood and started writing for Hollywood couldn't believe what they paid until he saw how he was treated, and he said, "Oh, they're not paying me for the writing; they're paying me for the indignity," which I continue to believe is true to this day. The writers are not treated the best in my side of the business. I will say that when I hired an editor from Bath, England, who was editing my first novel, she was like apologizing and giving me all these caveats as she was giving me the sweetest, nicest notes I've ever received in my life. And she was thinking I was going to be offended by her suggestion of changes. And I'm like, oh my God, you have no idea what notes in Hollywood are like. Oh my God, it's just so awful in comparison to this. You guys are, everybody on the indie publishing side of the business, you guys are so sweet and so nice. I feel like I've left the real world and I've entered, like, I don't know, the world of the Smurfs or something. Everyone's super nice to each other. It's amazing.
That is so funny. So, okay, well then let's come back to why the hell write a novel? If it's all so wonderful and unicorns and roses in Hollywood, maybe they treat you badly or whatever, but they pay you well. Why write The Year of the Rabbit, which I should tell people I've read? It's very, very good. So obviously you can write, you can tell a story, but why bother when you're just doing all this amazing work?
Well, okay, so here's one little fact. Hollywood buys between 10 and 20 projects for every one that gets made. So that means over the course of my career, they have bought so many projects that I have spent 6 months, a year writing and rewriting again and honing to the best of my ability to compete in that knife fight in the phone booth that I'm talking about, and to make it like just sing just perfect, and it still does not get made. And that project ended up being seen by 15 people in the world ever know that thing existed, and it's gone. It's just out there. Well, guess what? I've been writing for almost 30 years now. Those rights have reverted. Those projects, there's nothing saying that I can't take those projects and give them a second audience, give them a second chance at life. And even other ones where it's my work on that project didn't end up getting used in the final project. But God, I love the idea that I had for that. And what could I do? And I just decided that now, I'm in my 50s. Congratulations, 50. Joe?
Thank you. What a wonderful decade.
It really is. I'm loving it so far. I am absolutely loving it. It's a time when, for me, I was like, okay, let me look at the latter half of my life, and is there anything I want to do different? And I decided that I wanted to take some of those stories that, listen, I was well compensated for writing, but never got a chance to be in front of an audience. I could put these in front of an audience now. I can have a second bite of that apple, and I can explore this space where I have total creative control as opposed to almost no creative control over a project. And I thought that was fascinating. And then
so just on that, this is the 30-year copyright for scripts.
It's actually less than that within the industry. I wish I had the number in front of me, but within the Writers Guild, there's a negotiated point at which you can regain the rights to a project, and sometimes you have to pay what they paid you, but in a lot of cases you can literally call them up, talk to them, and say, hey, I kind of want to do something with this. Do you guys mind at all? And a lot of times they'll just say, we haven't thought about that in 15 years. No, go ahead, do whatever you want.
Yeah, take it away.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So that's cool. Okay. So how did you find the process? Like, what is the challenge of writing a novel to writing a screenplay? And if people haven't read a screenplay, I guess that would just explain the difference, I guess.
Sure. Well, how should I put this? What you guys do as novelists, and I'm saying you guys, even though I'm a novelist now, I'm still a little bit on the outside looking in. It's cheating. It's not right. It shouldn't be allowed. And I'm very, very mad that you guys get to write the way you get to write. And I'm stuck in screenplay format having to do it the hard way. You guys get to write the characters' interior thoughts and emotions and journeys, and that is cheating and it is wrong. I have been trained since I was a young person that you can't do that. You have to imply a character's emotional state through very carefully crafted dialogue and situation and moments. And the entire structure of a scene is designed to elucidate a character's internal state that cannot be understood any other way. Right? That's screenwriting. That's what that is. That's why we're so good at dialogue. We're so good at dialogue because we can't tell you what a character is thinking. Yes, people can do voiceover sometimes, but that is a pitfall of its own accord unless it's done very, very well. So you have to be careful about that. So, yeah. So you're stuck to two senses in screenwriting, right? You're what you see and what you hear. That's it. Mm-hmm. No thoughts. There are heavy structural demands. A screenplay has to have there could be a 3-act structure, 5-act structure. You can make a lot of arguments for how it needs to be structured. But novels, oftentimes, tons of times, I'm reading a novel considering, I get sent several a week from my agents who say, hey, check this out. People want to consider you for this. Lots of novels, their structure is such that it would need a lot of heavy lifting to become a film. Things like even Sahara, for instance. Sahara, the bad guy, all the villains die, and there's still 100 pages left in the novel after that point. 80 pages left at the end of that. You can't really do that in a film. I mean, Peter Jackson, God bless him, tried to do the ending of Return of the King, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and got, there's still jokes flying around the internet about how many endings that thing has. It just keeps going on and on and on. And I think he did a great job. It won the Academy Award. So kudos to him. But in general, you can't do that. So structure is something that is very, very important. Pacing demands, right? Film travels at 24 frames a second through that projector onto the screen. And it does not stop. It does not pause. It does not allow you to go out and get a coffee. I guess now with streaming, you can pause anytime you want, but it is still designed for you to watch in one go, to be sitting there and experiencing that. And then there's the length issue. Sahara was a 193,000 word novel. The screenplay for Sahara was 23,000 words. How do you take a 193,000 word experience and create a similar story experience in just 23,000 words? In order to do that, you have to have every scene. No scene is about one thing. In a novel, scenes are about one thing all the time. In a screenplay, every scene is about 4 or 5 or 6 different things stacked on top of one another, very artfully folded in on each other. So we're advancing this plot element here. We're advancing this character conflict here. We're hinting. We're doing setups and payoffs for this and that and the other thing that are going to come 15, 20, 45 pages later. All of these things are happening in one scene. And that creates a need to rewrite a lot more than novelists sometimes do. Some novelists are rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. I get that. But for the most part, novelists can kind of go and it makes it hard for discovery writers, frankly. There are not many discovery writers in Hollywood. It's a very difficult thing. First of all, because you're constantly having to share your work with the producers. So you're sharing outlines and pages and all of that sort of stuff and just saying, I'm not really sure what the story is going to be about. I'm just going to, I have some ideas, but let me just see where it goes.
Just going to make it up.
you don't get a very good response for discovery writing. Now, that said, there are some, like Greta Gerwig famously said that she has to start writing to understand what her story is. And I love that. I love that there are, even in Hollywood, there are discovery writers. And her and Noah Baumbach, when they wrote Barbie, did a lot of discovery writing. And I think it shows in the work that the depth of the theme of that movie is so evident and I feel like doesn't come from an outline. I think that comes from discovery writing to some degree.
Yeah, I mean, as we record this, even just this morning, I've been editing my Death Valley script again. But I guess in terms of editing, as a discovery writer with the novel, it's a different process. But it is actually much easier to edit like 110 pages, 120 pages or whatever, than of quite spaced out because of the way screenplays are formatted. It's much easier to edit a script than it is to edit a whole book.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of is, but maybe you'll find in some ways it also isn't because in a screenplay, because things are so dense and so layered, you have a lot more of the pulling on a thread and the entire sweater falls apart can happen.
Yeah.
That can happen a lot more in a screenplay sometimes, whereas the spaced out editing of the novel gives you more on-ramps and off-ramps to get out of the story problems you're creating for yourself in the rewriting process. Maybe at least that's what I'm finding. But yes, I am finding editing my novel is very difficult, and I'm very happy to have somebody doing it with me and kind of for me. But I'm in that process right now on the second novel, and all I'm doing is every time I go in to fix something, I end up adding new chapters, and I'm like, oh God, what am I doing? Am I ruining this? Am I, all my film instincts are yelling at me. Don't, what are you doing?
I think that's interesting because readers of books, of novels, are a lot more forgiving. When you think about the target market for a screenplay, it is a very small group of very, very picky people, whereas the target audience for a novel is a lot wider, and they're not people necessarily who are picky about, well, they are picky in some ways, but they're not the same. So it feels like the target audience is so different, even though obviously eventually you hope your film will be shown in front of people. Most people will never see your script, right? It's a very small audience.
Yeah. It's so true. It's so true. The way I describe it is when you submit a screenplay, you're giving it to readers who are paid to say no.
Yeah.
When you write a novel, you're giving it to readers who have already paid to say yes. That's a radically different experience.
They paid a lot less, by the way. They
Yes.
may have paid or nothing in Kindle Unlimited.
It's unreal. Exactly. No, that is a major difference. In screenwriting, you are writing to a hostile audience, like incredibly hostile audience. That is all trying to figure out how not to lose their jobs if this thing gets made and fails. That is the sad truth of the matter.
So you mentioned there about submit your screenplay, and this is obviously one of those interesting things for me and maybe other people listening. We've maybe written an adaptation of a novel, or we've written a spec screenplay, and where do we submit it? Now, I've obviously been to some pitch things. I am now looking at some competitions. So what are your thoughts on our scripts if we do write them and obviously try and make them the best they can be first, but where should they then go?
Right. Okay. So you're asking me, you're getting really into the hard questions now. I was told this would not be an ambush interview. This is not fair.
It's so not.
Let me ask you a question, Joe. You asked me for some advice when you were about to go to Berlin, to the film festival, and to the film market. Did you take my advice?
Well, you said don't even write a script.
No. I was very specific about how you had to pitch yourself. And you were like, "Oh, but we're British. We don't do that. And this is Europe. We don't do that." And I said, "No, they still do it in here. They still do it in Europe. Maybe not quite as brashly as the Americans do."
No, I didn't. I don't think I'm very good at that. But I am feeling a lot better about that now. I know a lot more. about the industry. I think I needed to be there to kind of understand, as you said, what was so funny was how much, not contempt, but they don't think much of writers, as you said.
Which
is crazy to me.
No, I mean, from an indie writer's point of view, it's shocking because all you do is run into people that are, oh my God, I love your podcast. I love your book. I love your this. I love your that. To be like, oh, geez, another writer. All right, fine.
Yeah,
give
dismissive.
Me.
Yeah.
You got 3 minutes. Tell me what you want to say.
Yeah, so what can we do? What can we do?
All right, so there is no way to break into Hollywood, and yet it happens every day. There is no way to get a film made in Europe, and yet it happens every day. The sad fact of the matter is that these are because, as I already mentioned, because of the cost of making these things, it is very difficult to get scripts read and seen and accepted, and every step of the process is a struggle because of the time and effort and cost involved in the endeavor in and of itself. So, that said, there are things you can do to increase your chances of having success here. If you ask me before you write anything, what can you do to up your chances? I will say, if you can write a high concept, low budget, contained space story with powerful characters and theme, you are going to leapfrog over 90% of all other scripts that have ever been written and put yourself into contention, because those are projects that are eminently producible. When I say contained, I mean 1 or 2 locations. I mean really, really contained, simple ideas. I said this, I was on the screenwriting panel at 20 Books Vegas in 2 years ago, at the last 20 Books Vegas. And a romance writer said, yeah, well, that's all great and good, but I'm a romance writer. I can't write a contained romance. And I said, sure you can. And I was like, what about this? You know, 2 people are in a man and a woman, or well, it depends, man and a man, whatever your genre is, whatever your tropes are invited to a ski weekend. They're the first 2 to the chalet. They immediately hate each other, and an avalanche snows them in. Completely closes them in, and the romance is the romantic comedy is these 2 people at each other's throats, stuck here, who gradually fall in love, as they always should have, right? Wouldn't that be good? And the person was like, yeah, I think she was writing it down.
She wrote it down.
I think she did. So you can do that with anything and create that, but that is the kind of projects that have the greatest odds because they're producible, right? It doesn't take a lot, and the lower the price becomes, the lower the difficulty of making something becomes, the easier it is to say yes, and the harder it is to say no to some degree. That said, have a log line, number 1. Right? A log line is just a couple sentences, 2 or 3 sentences. It's you know how we all hate writing blurbs? Okay, take that blurb that you have on the back of your book and that you have on your Amazon page and cut it by 2/3. Cut it by 3/4. And that is all you can say about your film. Until you have that, you're not really in the game. You need to have something super small and super simple.
I'll just say a little tip there for people. Just like we now can for sales descriptions, you can upload it to Claude or ChatGPT, and it will give you 20 log lines, 50 log lines, whatever you like. So that's what I do. Only do that if you're happy with the terms and conditions of these sites. But I certainly am finding this a lot more useful for my pitch material.
A great thing that AI can do for sure is to summarize something that you've already put together.
You've already written, yeah.
Absolutely. It's very, very good for that. I totally agree with that. So there are some other ways that you can have your project get more visibility. Some people talk about screenplay competitions. I am going to tell you that very few mean anything, okay? And I will tell you the ones that do. So Screencraft is closing down. Launchpad, Week Screenplay, those are all closing down. These were owned by a company called Coverfly, and it's restructuring the way it does its business. So a lot of screenplay competitions are dying, and a lot of the ones that still exist are not like nobody in a place to buy a screenplay and to make a film are reading those scripts. The ones that do matter, number one is the Nicholl Fellowship, NICHOLL Fellowship. That is the absolute number one. Screenplays that the screenplay that wins will be read by a lot of people in this town and a lot of people around the world. Screenplays that even make it into the semifinals or finals, they will be. That is a feather in your cap. That is a calling card that you can use to go out there. There's another one called. There's a website called Tracking B, TRACKINGB.com. The Tracking B, which stands for Tracking Board contest, is absolutely legit, and Hollywood in particular pays attention to scripts that win that or make it to the top of that. The Austin Film Festival, the AFF, that screenplay competition is very well regarded and does mean something. There's a screenplay competition called The Page, and then there is Sundance and Raindance have both competitions and fellowships and all sorts of things. They're a fantastic resource. You should familiarize yourself with them. And South by Southwest. Those are the ones that are legit and have some amount of people that are legitimately looking for scripts to produce reading. So anything else, I would say save your money. Don't give in the entry fee, because I don't think it's going to mean a lot. Other avenues.
There's a lot of them that charge. What about these pitch things? So obviously I'm going to London Screenwriters again next month, and there's a pitch fest, and there's sort of 50 producers, execs, agents, and it's a like speed dating, 5 minutes. It's absolutely terrifying. And last year it was ridiculous, and I was just the complete rabbit in the headlights. It was very out of my comfort zone. This year I'm going again, and I think I'm going to be a lot more relaxed.
Good.
So do you think those are worth doing?
They vary just as much as screenwriting competitions. Some of them, like nobody on that panel is going to have any interest. I've been on those panels, and I can tell you, I'm doing a favor for somebody to sit there and listen to people.
Oh, they're not a panel.
Pitch
it's
me.
like you get 5 minutes one-on-one, and you do that as much as possible.
Oh, okay. I know that. I know that
thing.
format as well. You never know, so I can't really say no. But I'll say that much like speed dating, it's a low percentage game. But
yeah, no, fair enough. I did speed dating back in the day.
Yes. It is you got to kiss a lot of frogs. So I wouldn't say no to that, even if it's just to have the pressure of pitching repetitively, which helps you learn how to do that. Pitching is absolutely a skill that you are not taught as a novelist, and you must learn as a screenwriter. People have said, you know, I went to 20 Books Vegas 2 years ago, and this year I was a speaker at Author Nation, and I'm going to be a speaker at a bunch of other things this year. And they're like, well, you have one book out. How are you all of a sudden doing all this sort of stuff? I said, well, I'm used to pitching. I can pitch myself. I can pitch, things. That's, I have training in that, really, and that's
also you're
super,
incredibly
super important.
Successful, and everyone wants to talk to you. That's also it.
That's fine. I mean, sometimes you get blown off by people like Joe Penn, who says, no, I don't have time for lunch, and then figures out, oh, wait, I know who you are.
Figures out who you are and goes, oh, yeah, maybe I'll hang out. And just for people listening, I didn't know who Tom was, and luckily I read his book, and it was amazing, and that's how we kind of connected. And then I realised he was sort of this big-name screenwriter, so it was an interesting connection, but that's unlikely to happen to me multiple times, and I'll just suddenly, meet this director. Although here is a question. I am getting pitched by so many screenwriters turned novelists, and I was wondering, is this because of the writer's strike a few years ago and everyone just decided to write their novel?
I was going to say that. I actually got sidetracked at one point, but I was like, the Hollywood studio system did me a huge favor in shutting down and preventing me from writing screenplays for 6 months last year during the Hollywood writer's strike. closing down the entire business. People lost homes, people lost apartments, people had to leave the business. It was a really, really tough time. But for me, I was like, oh my God, I can actually finish the novel now. I can actually start moving in this direction that I've wanted to move in for so long. Thank you very much. It was very kind of you to do that. That is exactly.
There's a lot right now. You must have been quick off the mark, because I'm getting them every day now, every single day, people in various Hollywood things sending their novels.
That right?
And yeah, it is very, very interesting. But we don't have much time left. I could talk to you forever, but I do want to ask you about AI, because obviously part of that writer strike was around the clauses and use of AI, but film has used different technologies for many, many years, and James Cameron is famously working with Runway. There's, special effects. Film already uses AI, but it's moving into a lot more areas. So what do you see ahead in terms of opportunities? Like, will costs come down? What will happen? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on the matter. I think that we are in a time of profound technological change. We've been here before. We've been here many, many times before. I'm young and I'm old enough to remember the advent of the word processor and the explosion of the personal computer. Everybody who worked in the whiteout factory, they had to find another job. Everybody who worked building typewriters had to find another job. There is going to be people that are going to lose jobs because things are being automated out of their purview and automating them out of space. It's not really something that we need to fear as creatives. Almost everything that we're looking at is not a thing that is going to replace us. It is a new tool that we're going to be able to use in creating art and in creating great art. If you go to YouTube and check out and type in Hedra, Hedra, and watch what they're doing, you will see some stuff that is scaring a lot of people in my business. It's a company that is doing amazing video production that is completely AI generated, amazing facial animation and voice cloning work that is giving fairly photorealistic performances of AI actors. And I know some actors that are like, there will be no human actors in the next 100 years. And I'm like, no, look at this and see how good can this get? It can get only so good. It can deliver a lifelike performance. It can't give a earth-shattering performance. It's not going to change your life. It's going to be good enough. It's never going to be at that level of exception. At least that's my belief. And the same thing goes for writing. If I had a job writing copy for websites, I would be very worried about my job. I think that is definitely something that AI can replace. Crafting the stories that I can craft with my voice and my weird, twisted sensibility, I don't think AI is ever quite going to be able to do that. As you've said many times on this podcast, it's what you bring that is the unique, that's the differentiator, that is the thing that AI will never replace. And that is also why your readers buy your books. They're buying it for that special J.F. Penn factor, that special thing. And I think the same thing goes for my industry.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. But I do hope that it will bring down some costs in production, so that, for example, I know here in Bath, there's, where they film Bridgerton and all of this kind of thing, they're building these sort of digital interiors or scanning the interior of the Georgian buildings so that the actors can be somewhere else and they're still acting in the room, but it's just projected onto that green screen. So the future for actors may be that you don't get to travel so much, you just have to act in another green room, but a lot of them are used to that, I guess.
Yeah, if you look at all of the Star Wars television series that are out recently, they all use a technology similar to that, where not only are you acting on a 360-degree cyclorama screen, but you are in real time. You're not having to imagine what the green screen is showing. You're seeing what the actual surroundings of you are. Absolutely amazing. There are AI right now can already dub into foreign languages and do great work with not just subtitling, but actually dubbing projects into foreign languages. That's going to be a cost-cutting exercise. There's going to be a lot of stuff that can really, really bring down the cost. The fact of the matter is you are maybe going to take a 100-person crew and make it an 80-person crew. You can maybe take a 50-person crew and make it a 30-person crew. There are still so many jobs that are still going to require people and skilled artisans in their particular fields that I'm not sure. I think there's a limit to how much AI is going to be able to save us, but it will be able to save quite a bit. Yeah.
Fantastic. So just briefly tell us about The Year of the Rabbit and where can people find you and your books online?
Listen, my first novel out of the gate, I'm super happy that it's gotten the response that it's gotten, both from Joe. You were very kind to blurb the book for me. I really appreciated that.
It's a great book, great thriller for people listening.
I will say that I'm on Amazon exclusive, so it's T.D. Donnelly, Donnelly. Year of the Rabbit is the name of the book. And I encourage you, if you like action thrillers, if you like spy thrillers, if you like thrillers with a lot of character and a very unique lead character, I highly recommend you check it out. Should I give a quick blurb of it?
Yes. Yeah, why not?
All right. Sure. Year of the Rabbit is about Malcolm Chaucer. Malcolm Chaucer is the world's greatest interrogator. He is a human lie detector that can read every micro-expression on your face to know whether or not what you're saying is a truth or a lie. He knows this because he is a deeply broken man who for 8 years was tortured in North Korea and suffers extreme PTSD. That is his superpower. That is why he is hyper-vigilant and able to notice all of these things. Well, during a routine interrogation in New York, he finds out that the person that these people are looking for is his ex-wife, and that starts him down a road of suddenly being hunted himself, as well as she is, by nameless assassins and actually everybody in New York that has access to a computer is suddenly told a $1 million bounty on his head. Can he figure out truth from lies? Can he figure out who wants to kill him? And can he figure out the secret that is the Year of the Rabbit?
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for your time, Tom. That was great.
Oh, let me just say, tddonnelly.com is the website. That's the other thing. Thank you.
Thank you. So I hope you found this discussion interesting, and personally I found it super useful, and I actually entered one of my scripts into one of the competitions Tom mentioned, so it was very timely. Let me know what you think of today's episode. Leave a comment on the podcast show notes at thecreativepenn.com or on the YouTube channel, comment on X at thecreativepenn, or email me, joanna@thecreativepenn.com. Send me pictures of where you're listening or your favourite cemetery or churchyard. Next week, I'm leaving it open. I know I normally know exactly who's coming on, but I've got a ton of interviews coming up, and I'm also a bit behind because of being in Iceland and all that. So tune in next week for a surprise guest. In the meantime, happy writing, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening today. I hope you found it helpful. You can find the backlist episodes and show notes at thecreativepenn.com/podcast. And you can get your free author blueprint at thecreativepenn.com/blueprint. If you'd like to connect, you can find me on Facebook and X at The Creative Penn, or on Instagram and Facebook at JFPennAuthor. Happy writing, and I'll see you next time.